Hello, this is Bike Fitness Coaching, back for another quick video. This is going to be part 2 of Is My Saddle Worn Out? Saddle anatomy. I've gotten several requests to go through and explain what the different parts of the saddle, what to look for, and how do I determine what saddle to get. Again, I want to basically mention I'm not sponsored by Specialized. I do believe in their saddle products. So that's what I'm going to say about that topic. Saddle anatomy. You got the length and the width of the saddle. The length is not quite as important as the width. You have a cover, padding underneath. Cover is usually either a man-made material, leather, or no cover at all, i.e. a full carbon saddle. A foam padding can be thin, as in some of the racing level of saddles, medium, where you would have more of a touring or club racing saddle, something you can be comfortably in for several hours, 2-3 hours, and a little thicker one, which we'll get into a little bit later discussing that. So the important part is getting your sit bones in the correct position, which we'll see here in the next slide. Again, I like for men's saddle to have a hole or a cutout, and for a women's saddle to have that partially filled in. The other anatomy of a saddle is the nose of the saddle, as well as the rails. Rails are either steel, 7mm round, or titanium, usually hollow titanium, 7mm round, or carbon fiber, which are going to be ovalized. And if you look at the last video we put together, we discussed the importance of getting the right ears or the right clamp to clamp the saddle onto the bicycle. Get the wrong clamp, you can destroy the carbon rails. One important thing to note, if you look at the line above where it says rails, the gold colored line, a lot of saddles have are either flat, like the power saddles, flat on the back. Ergon has a lot of flat back saddles. Other saddles will verge off, will round off really quickly toward the end, and you can actually be sitting too low on a saddle. And if you look for a saddle, you're going to see two different types. Those two different types of saddles, normally you will have to go one size wider if the saddle curves off too fast compared to a saddle that has a flatter rear section to it. You can see that the wider your sit bones, i.e. the narrower the saddle, the lower you're sitting in the saddle, so the more pressure you're putting in the whole cutout area, the area you don't want to have pressure at. If you look at the bottom of the saddle, normally a saddle width is going to be stamped somewhere on the bottom of the saddle. In this case, it's a 143, which would be good for a pro rider. For most of us, we're in the 150 to 155 range or wider. You'll also have a shell, or some people call the base of the saddle, which will be either a pure nylon resin, which would be like a Zytel or a DuPont Delrin. The next level up would be a reinforced nylon, or what they call glass filled, where you take fiberglass and injection mold it into the Zytel or Delrin to add a little bit of strength and rigidity, or a carbon flock, which would be the next level up, or the highest level and the highest price saddle would be a full carbon fiber, as in this case. Cover the padding, the nose, the rails from a profile view of the saddle, and you can see again, the wider your sit bones, i.e. the narrower the saddle, the lower you're sitting toward the back of the saddle, and the more pressure you're putting on the front of your body, which you don't want it. The Specialized power saddles, really there's the power saddle, which has a cutout for the male rider, and the Mimic, which is for the female rider. Two things, so people want to know what the sit bones are. They're actually called the ischial tuberosity. There's a picture of them right there. And the sit bone width is referred to as the distance between the middle of the ischial tuberosities. In our studio, males cyclists usually fall in about a 110 to 130 millimeter sit bone width. Female riders about a 115 to 135 millimeter sit bone width. What that equates to is a 150 to 160 millimeter saddle width for men, and again depends on the curve of the saddle, or 155 to 168 for women. Are saddles too wide? Are they too narrow? Let me just have a little larger discussion here about the main issues with bicycles brought in for fitting. Usually I see cranks are too long, stems are too long, and saddles are too narrow. Those are the main three. And a third, which is not the bicycle, but it's the person, it's the cleats are in the wrong position. Why do you get cranks too long, stems too long, and saddles too narrow? Because the bicycle manufacturers and the component manufacturers don't talk to each other. Each is relying on the other to give the information to the other, so everything stays the same. Bicycles are spec'd by the ex-pro rider that is now working for the Shimano's and for the SRAMs, etc. And hey, this is what we used to ride. This obviously is good enough for anybody and everybody, including weekend warriors. So this is what they're putting on bicycles, and this is what we normally have to change. So the rider's position, I have a green, yellow, and red. The green is kind of where you want the sit bones to sit, or the ischial tuberosities. You're up on the top of the saddle before the saddle is starting to curve down. You can see in this saddle is the arc in the where of the yellow plus sign is. About that point is the saddle starts curving off, and definitely the red part, you're sitting off, way off the edge of the saddle, and you risk your sit bones coming off the saddle and rocking your hips back and forth, wearing out the sides of the saddle, wearing out your bib shorts, and chafing yourself in the along the sit bone area. We see that all the time in our studio. How much amount of cushion do I need? Well, we really don't recommend these type of saddle pads. Here's a saddle pad on the left and a saddle pad with an extra thick padded saddle on the right. You're going to know too much padding is going to be uncomfortable. A light padding is going to be just firm enough for you that you can ride 2-3 hours and not be uncomfortable. Too little of padding, i.e. a pure carbon fiber saddle, is again going to be uncomfortable as well. Amount of cushion. Here's another couple examples that we do not recommend this type of saddle on most bicycles, or saddle cushions. Here is 2 examples of no cushions, no padding, no cover. Firm saddles, yes, probably going to be a little bit uncomfortable for most riders. 2 examples coming up, the Power Comp, again, specialized Power Comp. When you do look for saddles, I've underlined and indicated some of the things you want to look for. In the very top, stiff, carbon reinforced shell. Remember we talked about a nylon? It's a Zytel or a Delrin stiffened with a carbon fiber flock to give a little bit more rigidity. You're going to look for what type of rails does this saddle have. It has chromoly, so it's going to be steel rails. It's going to be basically created so you have more comfort in the pudendal area. You're going to have some level 2 light/medium level padding, and just again, hollow chromoly rails. Some are solid chromoly rails, some are hollow. Look for that. Look for what type of cover it has and what type of padding that the saddle comes with. Here's a Power Arc Expert. Basically the same saddle, except with titanium rails. Again, you're just going to look for things in the literature, look for certain keywords, same channel, so that's going to be the cutout, body geometry, shape, assure blood flow, all important things. Going to have a lightweight, level 2, medium density padding. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the video. And stay tuned for the next. We got an exciting all about bearings coming up. Any questions, comments, let us know in the comment section, and see you in the next video.